Pretty. I can see it's pretty
Yo,
good for
what's
that.
up? Mark's talking too much already. Already said bad words.
I'm bad. No, not
Hard
yet.
G's, hard R's.
So
Right.
we are here with Jeffrey Scott this evening. Um, he cleans windows and stuff. You guys may or may not know him. Safety green training. Um, he does some what is it? Green building maintenance. Am I wrong?
Safety green training, green building maintenance services,
That's
and
what
we've
it
got a
is.
green window cleaning
There you go.
services.
There you go. And how long have you been in the industry?
Well, since I was 14 years old.
Oh,
Well, that's when I started hanging.
So that's
I've been cleaning windows
1962?
basically since I could walk.
Since
So
1962 then, right?
pretty close.
You look pretty fucking old, dude.
That's what cleaning windows. It's all that ammonia.
Yeah.
When you're doing
My
methanol
man,
shots and
my
huffing
man.
ammonia all
Yeah,
day.
hey man, that's a guy after being Mark's heart right there with the
right.
ammonia, man.
When I hear a window cleaner talk about ammonia, I know
Yeah.
he knows his shit.
When I hear a dude say ammonia, I'm like, this guy is fucking definitely got his shit together.
Well,
You know
we
what I
don't
mean?
even use Bo Peep off the shelf. We use what's it, hydrous ammonia,
Oh,
Yeah,
which
it's like
it's
15.
like 39.9%.
Yeah,
Like that
that's-
shit'll knock you on your ass.
yeah.
You just open the tap next to the building and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
You know, I've always thought,
Fingerprints run away.
a super soaker full of that shit would
Mhm.
take out a crowd.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
I've always said this when I started working for my dad, we cleaned this place that made their own blueprints. The way they used to make blueprints was they pull the fumes out of ammonia, run it through some kind of machine which caused the blueprint. Well, they had to dispose of it. So we did this job quarterly. So every quarter we'd get like 2 cases, 8 gallons of like 33% ammonia
Oh,
with
nice.
fumes gone. So they didn't have to pay to get rid of it. And man, I'll tell you what, that
No
stuff,
babies
you
yet.
put a capful, it finds every cut in your hands, boy, but it cleans.
Right?
Back
I'm
when
right,
I was
right?
working
no
for-
babies yet, right, guys?
I haven't
In the
heard
last-
anything.
since this afternoon. Seth
No.
and Jacob are normal 2 other guys that are on the podcast with us every week. They're both expecting children like any day now, like
Right,
at
they're out-
any moment.
They're out on
Big
paternity leave right
Yeah,
now.
they're out on paternity leave right now.
Right, right.
I'm the
What's
substitute.
paternity leave?
Jacob says his boobs hurt,
Yeah.
and Seth
not
has
his
claimed,
boobs. Not his boobs. Jeff was not Jeff. I just combined their names. He was complaining about his nipples being sore. Is what?
right, they
I
were
heard.
tender, right? I think he
his-
said they were
his-
tender.
his nipples
Well,
were
wait till
tender.
that thing starts teething.
Yeah.
Right. And Seth says something about ovaries. I was trying to explain to him he doesn't have ovaries, but
Right.
because he
He
comes
might.
from Boston, he might, you know.
So
Can
I
you
got a little something I want to share before I forget, because if I don't, I'll forget, and then afterwards I'll be like shit. So today I got this phone call randomly out of the blue from a lady. She's in her 70s. She's a doctor. She lives by herself. One of my customers that I've been cleaning his windows for years. He used to build custom homes. That was his thing, you know. He used to build custom homes, and he's built just about everybody's fucking home around here on the water. I mean, this guy's a pretty prolific builder. So when she calls and drops his name, my ears perk up. I'm listening because this is somebody that I've taken care of for years, and he's always taken care of me. So, you know, I've always extended that courtesy to people that he recommends me to. So I go there this morning because I had a cancellation. And I get to the house, and she's, you know, barely getting around. She's, like I said, she's not, she don't seem crazy or anything, but she likes to talk a bunch. And she wanted to come out and, you know, meet me halfway down the driveway, you know, waddled halfway down the driveway. She's not a big lady, but she's, you know, waddling because her hips must be terrible. Well, she almost falls. I had to catch her. So I caught her so she didn't fall. She's like, you know, thank you. She goes, I'm not supposed to be getting around like this. And I'm like, dude, you know, if you're not supposed to be walking around, I was on my way up to the door. You didn't have to come out and meet me. You know, it's not a big deal. I'd have come up there. She's like, oh, I want to continue doing the things that I normally do. I'm from South Philly, da-da-da-da-da. She's, you know, she's a black lady. She's a super sweet lady. Really loved her. Her company, I got to tell you. But I also, about 25 minutes later, saved her from falling through her fucking attic ceiling.
Oh, Jesus.
What's she doing in the attic?
She followed me upstairs, up into the attic. Up the attic stairs. You know, the pull-down attic stairs. So I go upstairs. I got my headphones in. I start cleaning the window in the attic because she's got an attic over her garage. She wanted the inside of it clean because she's going to put a wreath up there and a nativity scene, she said. I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? So I get up there, I clean this big ass window. I turn around and she's standing right there next to me talking to me. It scared the shit out of me. So we're going back and forth. I'm like, well, I thought you weren't supposed to be like, she's like, I know, but I just wanted to see how it was going. And I hollered for you and you didn't hear me. I'm like, well, I got my headphones in. I was like, I normally do that. I was listening to a book on tape. I said, normally I listen to a book on tape while I'm working. You know, I try to learn and work at the same time. And she's, you know, talking and she goes a step back and put her fucking foot right through the fucking drywall and started to fall. God. And I grabbed her by her shirt. I got one of her locks. Is that her locks? Got one of her locks. I ripped one of her locks off.
So just
I'm not. Yeah, this is legit. I saved her. I saved her from fucking herself up so bad. She's like, I can't believe that just happened. I was like, man, you're not supposed to be up here. How did you get up? Dude, I don't know how she got up there. Honestly, I don't. The will of people. And anyways, long story short, she followed me around that whole every fucking window. Every window, dude. Every window. She talked the whole time. If she took 2 or 3 breaths in an hour, I'd be surprised.
Well, you made her day, though. You know what? Some people, she probably had nothing else to do.
I have a feeling that she does not get a lot of company.
She's going to book you again next week.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she just when I was getting ready to leave, she hugged me, which was nice. And she asked me, she did ask me if I knew anybody that repaired drywall. I don't ever recommend anyone. I never do that. I don't recommend people. Yeah. It never works out. The one time I did that, it got backfired on me. But she's like, she goes, I'm going to see you 3 times next year. I'm like, oh, great. You know what I mean? With the schedule, a whole day for this lady. But she just, you know, poor lonely lady.
Yep.
And then, you know, I couldn't get out of the driveway, of course, because as soon as I get to my truck, I turn around and she's halfway down the driveway again, still talking to me. She wanted to talk to me about taxes and how I better not have voted for Kamala Harris because that bitch has got my taxes so damn high. I'm on a fixed income now because of this, that, and the third. This lady, she wouldn't stop talking. She would not stop talking. Nice lady. She paid cash. She gave me 3 super crispy $100 bills. You know what I mean? Like, I was there for an hour and 20 minutes. I would have been there 45 minutes if she hadn't been talking. Right. I didn't have to save her.
She wanted you to justify that $300.
Bro.
You guys get a lot of tips doing Resi?
Occasionally.
People get so many. It blows my mind.
We do.
Yeah, they do take care of employees, but commercially, rarely do you ever get a tip.
We had on a condo tower a couple of weeks ago, a lady walk out and hand my hangers each $100 while they were hanging along her balcony.
Yeah.
All right, we got our first question.
That's rare as hell. That never happens.
We got our first question here. It's from Mark Anthony Castaneda Guzman. I mean, this guy's like got 4 fucking names. Pick one. What are you, special?
Right.
He wants to know your favorite descender.
My favorite descender?
Yes, sir. He wants to know.
Well, my favorite one is the Harkin, the new one, but it's $750. We don't put that in service.
Right.
It's the Harkin clutch. Mm-hmm. Harkin and CMC went together on it. But the one we're currently using is the Skylatech Sirius. And we love it. I believe the manufacturer's instructions say it's got a 30-year work life, which I have a really hard time believing, but we'll see. But we were burning up IDs in 4-6 months, you know.
So I'm just curious on that subject. You said you got a favorite one that's not in the field. Is it not in the field because if you can't buy one for every guy, you don't want to?
That's
that the way.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. Well, it's my favorite one to use, but it wouldn't be the best one for window cleaning. It's got a really big handle on it.
Okay.
And we climb over a lot of balconies and high parapets. We're climbing off of ladders over some bullshit to get to get on rope, and it would snag up on a lot of stuff. But for like industrial rope access, it's the cat's ass. Where the Skylatech the Skylatech Sirius is real small and compact. There's no plastic parts on it. It's smooth as butter, and it does everything the other one does. And to answer your question, everybody on my teams has the exact same kit. We don't allow them to bring in various gear because if someone's going to come in for a rescue, they're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Right.
I said the F word. What the hell is this? Yeah.
Yeah. You can say the F word, just don't mention the COVID/word because we're gonna get thrown off YouTube. Nothing political too much.
Well, I mean,
but you can drop the
political's okay. You just can't talk about votes not being counted correctly, and you also can't talk about vaccinations.
Oh, you're allowed to talk about. No, you're allowed to talk about votes not being counted correctly now.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. Okay. It's a different election now. We're allowed to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
Yeah.
You're all right, Mark. I'm just saying, you got 4 fucking names. You know, you're like my son. My son's got 4 names. What is it with you guys of 4 names? You're fucking all super important. You're probably a mama's boy, too. Just like my son. Do you do midair switches often?
Quite
That's
often.
Another question. Quite often.
I get a kick out of when people call them midair rope transfers because all rope transfers are midair. It's just a rope transfer.
Right.
You know, we do them all the time, but the majority of my teams are SPRAT certified. We're not only RDS, but we're a complete industrial rope access company. So we can go over 300 feet compliantly. We can create our own attachment systems. We can do everything. There's not much we can't get to. If we were to go into most metros and start blowing whistles for OSHA, we'd put everybody out of business.
Oh yeah, all the cowboys.
But that's not something we've ever been willing to do.
You get a ton of tips residential. Hey, listen, man, I get offered tips. I refuse a lot of tips. The only time I take a tip is when they are just insistent on it. I just don't. I'm an owner operator. You're not. I'm not an employee.
Most of my resi side gets hundreds of dollars of tips a week.
Well, typically, if I get a tip, it's like $50 or $100. I've had a lady give me like $200 once. Bro, she was so happy.
Dude, this dude gave me and Joey about $200 a piece. All right. So this dude gave me and Joey about $200 a piece. And I looked at Joey. I said, "How underbid were we on this job?"
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, but you can't put that like that.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting your rate and you're competitive, you're doing it right.
You know how many times people say, "I bid this." Let's just use house. I bid this house at $500. They immediately said, "Go ahead, Wayne. Can you do it?" I should have charged them more. No, you should be charging what you need to make.
Yeah.
Just because they maybe they had their mind made up, no matter what it cost, they were going to do it, or maybe that was their budget and you hit their budget. But to sit there and second guess yourself and say, "Well, I should have asked for more," is bullshit.
If you start overcharging your clients, your competitors are going to start taking your work. Everything's got to be a win-win situation. It's got to be even across the board, or things aren't going to continue.
Right.
Just trying to find that.
What do you think of the CMC safety grabs?
Not real familiar with them. I've seen them, but haven't used them. As far as rope grabs go, we use 2 of them. All of my people are outfitted with 2. That way we can go from fall restraint to fall arrest when we're accessing our chair. So we're always on 2 points of contact.
Okay.
So I give them the option. We've got the Petzl ASAP locks. And we put the access lanyard on them so they can take a 2-person load for rescues. And then we also use the Kong. It's called the Kong backup. And I let them use 2 of one or 1 of each. It does whatever they want to use because they're both awesome.
Okay. Hope that answers your question there, bud. Man, you were worried about, like, man, I want to be able to make sure we see questions. And bam, we got questions. Now, nobody usually asks questions.
Now, that being said, if they're using the ASAP lock, it changes up how they've got to do a little extra training for self-rescue, because if you blow the shock pack on one, you've got to ascend quite a bit higher to get up to it. So then they need to carry a handled ascender with a foot loop attached to them with a cow's tail. If they're using that for fall arrest, if they're using the Kong backup for fall arrest, it's always right in your face, and self-rescue is so much easier.
Florida is in the Stone Age when it comes to high-rise window cleaning. There's still guys using ascenders as safeties.
That scares the shit out of me.
They haven't seen that video. I'm sure you have, Jeff, where they shock load and it just takes the outside sheath of the rope off.
They'll ride it right down.
Yeah.
They're specifically for static load only.
Right. I mean, and I've never seen, for the most part, and I don't look as much as I used to, but everybody's still on rack and bar here.
I miss them, but you're supposed to have a hands-free braking mechanism.
Yeah.
And, I came up on racks, and then we went to inverted 4-bar racks, and they're super fast. They're super clean. They don't twist your rope. They don't wear out. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah. You put some new bars on them.
But if you let go of it, you're going to fall arrest.
Yeah.
Like, there's no stopping. I know of several accidents where that's happened, where guys have decked out because once you lose it, you can't get your handle back on. You burn your hand to the bone.
Yeah.
Now, in we don't use them for RDS at all. However, for industrial rope access, if we're doing really high drops, once we get like 400, 500 feet plus, then we'll use a rack and bar, but we'll run 2 ropes through the rack and bar plus your backup.
The industrial rack, the one that's upside down looking?
No, you got to use a straight rack for that because you want to be able to remove bars or add bars as you come down for more friction. But by doing that, you can mitigate the stretch you put in the rope. Because it really never matters. It doesn't matter how much rope is below you. It does matter how much rope is above you because you've got rope stretch.
Yeah.
And at 7% stretch, if you've got 300, well, use a number, 300 feet above you, that's 21 feet of stretch, right? So now you get down to 2 floors and you do a complete shock load, you're decking out.
Yeah.
But when you've got those extreme heights, if you run 2 main lines, you're cutting that stretch in half.
Yeah, because you got two going through there.
And we'll use 2 descenders to like move back and forth across the building too. There's places where we do that. We'll have main lines coming from both ways, use 2 descenders, and now you can almost typewriter a building that way.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So is insurance for high-rise companies, Mark, and I guess Jeffrey too. This would be a question for both of you guys. There's 2 different sides of the states. There is insurance crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can tell you this: when I started, you could just. It was like a couple $100 a year for unlimited height restriction. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you could be covered on 60 stories down to 4 stories, and then all of a sudden they started capping it off at like 15 to 20 was one rate, and then above that they'd start raising their eyebrows, and they really don't want to write the policies anymore. At least here in South Florida, we
are unlimited nationwide, but we've got a lot of safety programs and moderators to bring ours back down again. And then regular insurance, we couldn't get most of the jobs we have. We've got to carry $5 and $10 million umbrellas for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which, those riders, they go back into the job, the client's paying for them. But if you're a company that's going after one large project, well, it's going to price you out of it. You got to be able to spread that out over a lot of work.
Over all of your work. That's the problem. Like I had a building, and it was only 10 stories, and it was bought by an insurance company. I don't remember who. Travelers bought a building. So then they came to me and go, your $2 million with a 1 umbrella is not going to cut it anymore. We need 5 plus a 2 umbrella. I'm like, that's $7 million. I go, so I called my agent, and he's like, yeah, you don't want to hear what I have to say about that. I'm like, what are you going to say? He said, walk away. He says, they're not going to do it. He goes, first of all, you're 6 months into, I pay every month, He's like, you're 6 months in. So at this point, we can't just raise it up and add it to financing. You got to pay it up front. Yeah. And then when I did those numbers, and then of course the trucks went to $1 million. Okay. I'm like in the red, and they're like, then their attitude wasn't like, usually you'll hear something, well, we're going to get you more buildings, which never happens. Okay. Or they go, well, you'll have it for other jobs. I'm like, no one in South Florida is asking for it because they don't want to pay. The bottom line is, for me to break even at what I was doing, I got to charge you another $5,000 per cleaning just to get to where I am, and then, so, he's like, the chief engineer's like, I can't get a lawn service. I can't get an electrician or a plumber. I go, well, they need to ease the restrictions up. I go, we've been cleaning your building 10 years, never an issue. And now all of a sudden you want me to double my insurance and I can't raise my price. Come on. Right. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to make more money. I'm trying to get what I got going here. And I don't think,
honestly, that's why we started getting into high rise and started embracing it. I started out a route cleaner. Doing small routes up in northern Wisconsin every day, driving to another town. back then there weren't a lot of strip malls. It was all old Main Street stuff, and people were paying out of their petty cash. They're just loading up cash.
Right.
But then, the bucket bobs are come around and everyone's underbidding each other. So we kept going to bigger and bigger work.
Yeah.
Then we were hanging and rolling with beams back in the day, stuff that was 5 to 7 stories. I mean, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So we were just repelling everything. Right. But then the water fed pole came out, right?
And that took the mid-rise out.
And you could reach 7 stories. So we kept going up.
You could reach it, but
we just kept running away from Bucket Bob, right?
Yeah.
And then what we learned is once you get to a certain size, you can start averaging out those insurance costs. But more importantly, you got to earn your way into these big jobs because you've got to bankroll them. And it seems like the bigger they are, the longer the payout is, like 30, 60, 90. We've got some that are 120 days before they pay.
Yeah.
So we're bankrolling, 15, 20 guys' salary until we get paid.
Do I think I would ever do a rope access training video with Jeffrey Scott? No. Have you ever thought about doing one? No.
We've had like Jersey and
maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, the WCR guys come in, and they did a video for us at one time, and we put them through a training. We put them through a training class, and it was fun.
Did they both go over the edge?
They absolutely did. Steve-O and Josh. Yeah.
I mean,
you guys know him as Jersey.
I would like to I would like to do it one time. You know what I mean? Go through a safety class. But have I ever thought about doing a video? No. I'm gonna be so laser focused on what's going on that I don't give a fuck about YouTube.
Right.
If you don't have it up here, meaning the ability to relax.
Right. Well, I'm just saying
anytime we've trained someone, they're like,
well, that's what I mean. Like the added pressure of doing everything properly while I'm on video. I'm not gonna self-consciously. I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't want to show these people I'm fucking up. You know what I mean? So then I'll be a hardhead about shit. So if I just go into it with no concerns of an audience, you know what I mean? Later on, watching me fumble through life,
Well, in our class on day 2, I mean, we do a full 2-day class, which is a little different than the other companies out there. First day is all classroom, right? So you're learning regulations, you're learning rigging theory. We're walking through all the gear, going through a lot of the physics. And then on day 2, when we're actually putting harnesses on it, so you're walking up to rope, you're playing with every piece, you're locking it up, you're disengaging it. We're stepping off of step ladders. We're going into self-rescues and pick-off rescues before we ever go out and get on real rope. And then the second half of the day, we're going out and we're rappelling off buildings, which is a really cool experience. And in Madison here, we've got a 13-story that we're putting people over. When I'm doing private courses, I think the biggest one we've done for training is like 400 feet right in there. The building itself was about 450, but we had grades, like there were roof grades, so we could keep it 300 and down. But I've had very few people that I can probably count on one hand over all the years that didn't want to get over the wall. Right. Because the way you walk it up,
I don't think I would be in a position where I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'd be lying to you if you told me we're going to go over this ledge on this 13-story building. I'd be lying to you if I said I wouldn't be nervous. I'd be fucking nervous.
Well, those are the ones
you to be nervous.
Yes, right.
I'd be nervous. I would do it, but I'd be fucking nervous.
That's one of the reasons that I train people, because I don't have those fears anymore.
Right.
I've got to live vicariously through your anxiety.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're not here, I'm going to poke you until you are.
Yeah.
You don't want the guy that loses his fear. Okay. You should always have. I've always said this. Guys that do high rise need to do it all the time, because when you don't do it for even as little as a month, it's a whole nother animal. Okay. I mean, I've brought guys in to come help me on jobs, 20 stories and so. I brought a guy in from across the state. Everybody recommended him. And he brought a buddy in. They knew what they were doing. But I'm watching them. And they're literally, they were using rack and bar. They were free falling between the floors. And he's like, yeah, I bet you don't have no guys that can hit the ground as fast as me. And I'm like, I'm not impressed, dude. I go, you're shock loading the rope. Every time you do that, I go, I can guarantee you, I'm probably going to get some phone calls from building management as to who I brought out
Just
to
that
work today.
statement alone, I bet you don't have anybody that can hit this ground as fast
I
as
told
I
him.
can.
Oh yeah.
I paid him for the day, and I said,
Duh, yeah.
You can go faster. I got a knife.
Right. I paid. They were good all around. Good window cleaners, good rigging. I mean, but I was like, look, this isn't worth it to me because it's not a race. I just want the building done properly. I don't want complaints. I go, and when someone calls the management and said some guy just zoomed by my window at 30 miles an hour, you know, stopped and cleaned it for 10 seconds and then went to the next. It's not that I'm not impressed with your skills. It's just not for me. You know what I'm saying? Because if you die on my job, aside from all the legal ramifications, I'm done.
Plus, there's the whole.
We don't want the Cowboys.
Plus, there's the whole we're just cleaning windows, relax guy. You know what I mean? We're just cleaning windows, relax, dude. You know what I mean? Like,
and this guy shows up with 4 bars on a big rack, and he's opening them up.
We've been seeing quite a few guys that have gotten themselves either seriously injured or killed lately. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, didn't a guy just recently passed and fell on a ladder? Succumbed to his injuries.
Yeah, he did, and I'd never met him, but what I know about him, he was really well connected. He was just an angel of an people. He really helped people.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. Yeah. Just a great dude. It just sucks. That's like, I was thinking about him today because I seen a post about him, and WCR I think shared it, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I see all these guys in the comments of my videos, and when I do TikToks or I do Instagram videos or YouTube videos, they're always busting my balls about using a pole and shit like that. And, I'm just trying to do shit in a way that will get me home to my family the safest way. Because I'm out there by myself. And if I can't do something where I feel absolutely 100% safe and secure in doing it, I'm going to do it from the fucking ground. I don't care what anybody thinks
we
about
stake
it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Traditional.
Yeah. I mean, I hear more about more guys hurting themselves or injuring themselves on fucking ladders than I do any fucking thing.
It's the most dangerous work. Yeah. It's way more dangerous than what we do when we're on rope.
Ladders are fucking sketchy, man.
Residential rooftops and ladders are way more dangerous than rope work.
I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, the guy said, well, why don't you use a fucking ladder? Well, I use a pole. If you can't, get fucking good, dude. That's what
the difference is this, Jeffrey. I don't know if you'll agree with this. The difference is this. Some guy goes to Home Depot and buys an extension ladder and leans it on a house and walks up on a roof to clean a window, okay? He's literally had, the biggest training he has had is nothing.
Right.
The biggest training he's had is opening his fucking wallet to buy that ladder.
Buy that $300 ladder. Yeah. Exactly. And that's the difference between someone that, even the Cowboys, I was taught by a guy that came up block and tackle, and he told me, he said, I'm going to teach you these basic things that are going to keep you safe. You're going to change things and do them the way you want to do them. But if you follow everything I tell you, you're going to go home at the end of the day, no problem. You know what I'm saying? Now, the game has changed with all the new descenders and whatnot, and better safety equipment and better training, obviously, than what I went through. But I did it for almost 20 years and had employees doing it with 0 incidents, not one. No rope fractures, no breaks, nothing. Because we stayed on top of it. I mean, part of it is the training, and then, anticipating what can happen. He used to tell me, it's like, if you're not feeling something, if something's off, don't go until you get it figured out, or call me or bring someone out that knows what they're looking at, I mean, I'm sure Jeffrey, sitting through all the IWCA and everything, and, I remember it was Stefan Bright said, a lot of window cleaners go on a roof and they look at a stink pipe, and how do they know if it's going to hold? They kick it.
He used to advise that back in the day.
Yeah, kick it. It's a piece of cast iron exhaust, some kind of stink pipe, and tie 3 of them together, or a small. They do.
This dude, no. This dude.
That's how we used to operate.
Yeah,
20, 30 years ago.
2006 or 7. We had this guy that used to do this building. I do it with a water-fed pole now, but he He used to do it. I think it was like maybe 6 drops on this building. It was like four stories in the front, 5 in the back because of the way the city's built. It kind of drops off to another story in the back. It's kind of slanted towards the lake, and that's what he would do. He would tie his rope around the fucking the roof hatch ladder. He would tie it around there, and then he would go around this fucking air conditioning vent, around this air conditioning fucking unit, then loop it back around this other fucking box doghouse on the roof. I'm like 4 or 5 places he wrote. I'm just like, dude, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
He would be like, just go downstairs and wait for me. I wouldn't. I would stand there. Not like I'm thinking I'm going to fucking save this fucking idiot, but I'm like, I would stand by the rope at the exit hatch just because I'd be freaked out the whole fucking time. Well, I'd be down there with this fucking guy. The boss is fucking probably sleeping because he works 3rd shift, and I'm up on the roof with this fucking yahoo fucking lining his rope around fucking palm trees and fucking potted plants and shit.
I mean, I'm sure Jeff can relate to this. I'm sure he's done it. I used to work for a guy. We'd get a hand truck and we'd put 200 pounds of elevator weight on it. You know, those big square blocks with the loop welded on them. No certified welder welded those loops. It's just you can pick it up. That doesn't mean you're supposed to tie to it, right? We had a building. It was 12 stories and literally had a curb for a parapet. It was like those weights laying down. You know, they're 4x4 squares, blocks of steel. Yeah, you could almost see them if you were looking at them. Okay, and I'd climb in the chair. And they would be tied back to like the ladder that like you're talking about. Yeah. And you'd watch the first 2 start to lift. And my boss would be like, listen, there's friction going over the wall. I go, what the fuck do you know about that? You're not an engineer. You're a fucking idiot.
Hey, man, he went to Trust Me Bro University.
Idiot.
He went to Trust Me Bro University.
Well, weight drops where people used to just tie to weights and go over a parapet. And every time you'd stop, they'd come up, right?
Lift.
Yeah. But if they come so far, they don't stop. They're going over.
Oh, no.
I mean, start telling some war stories. I mean, we used to use cornet on tabletops that had nothing up there. We didn't know what anchors were back in the day. We'd use a cornice hook and hook it over the back side of the building, like the other side of the roof, and then go over the far side.
Yeah, and if you don't pull the slack out, if you don't pull the slack out of that, you're going for a ride.
Or taking metal rods, welding a loop to the top, and dropping it down a stink pipe and just clipping to it. I mean, shit that we're lucky to be alive. We were lazy. We'd go up to roofs without any gear, and I was usually the bigger guy.
You'd take a rod and slide it in a stink pipe with a loop welded to it. Dude, what in the fuck?
It gets worse, man.
It gets worse, man. No, it doesn't.
So we only had seat harnesses 20, 30 years ago, right? And we didn't want to take gear up or counterweights because there's no anchors or nothing to tie to. So I'd put my feet at the parapet. I'd have a guy clip to me, and then he'd go over, and I was the counterweight.
Jesus,
you know, we would do skywalks that we didn't want to take stuff up, so we would just drape the rope over, rig 2 chairs, and then 1, 2, 3 step in. Right.
That's crazy.
And then you can see each other through the skywalk, and you stop, you're going like this.
Right.
And then you get down below the skywalk and you're looking each other in the eyes. You get down to the ground and you lift up your feet, and it's like 1, 2, 3, put your feet down so someone doesn't land on their ass.
Right. That's I've never even heard of that, but yeah. That's
wow,
crazy.
Dude.
Yeah.
There's stupid stuff. Like back in the day, employers, you know, the ownership would send us out to jobs that they never saw before.
No.
So we'd get up to the roof and we're like looking around like, what do we do? And you basically end up turning the thing into a spider web. You call your buddy over and you, hey, look how ingenious this was. Look how creative this was, right?
Yeah.
You know, and today it's just the opposite. Everything's cookie cutter. Everything's pre-planned. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeffrey. At least here in Florida, mid-rise, meaning 6 stories and less, most of them, 6 stories, you always have an air conditioning unit up there with lift hooks and stuff, but like the 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 story buildings rarely do have any kind of fall protect, you know, any anchor points.
We call mid-rise 20 stories and down. And there's still buildings that haven't been retrofitted, you know, which you cannot do with RDS compliantly. But with industrial rope access, we'll ground rig stuff from the opposite side of the building and just go all the way over it.
Yeah.
Right. Like we'll put bolt-in anchors in down below. You can use aerial lifts. You can use, once you get into industrial rope access, you're not required to have engineered certified points.
Really?
As a level 3, I can go deem anchor points, but I still have to make sure they're going to carry the load. They've got to be pull tested to have the working load limit. We got to document it, but we can get away with a lot more.
It's interesting. But you know what, though? Back in the 90s and when it was the Cowboys, there was probably a lot less people doing it, but there was, on the average, again, 6 to 8, 10 deaths a year.
Almost monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. That's what actually threw me into safety training. Because I grew up through the IWCA. My father ran a company. So I was one of those little brat kids running around, jumping in the pool and fucking with people, right? So I got networked fairly well, though. And when people were decking out, if I didn't know them personally, I usually knew something about them or the company that they were with, and it really affected me, because I was out there hanging too, and that stuff's always in the back of your mind.
Oh yeah,
right.
I can't imagine. Yeah, just like I just got done saying, I seen that post about that guy, and he was on my mind all day. You know what I mean? Like that, he's just out doing what I'm doing, and now he's fucking gone. You know what I mean?
Well, see, another guy.
It's a fucking big bummer, dude. That's a huge.
I've seen another guy put a water-fed pole into power lines and blew his legs up again. Yeah, I mean, dude, that's the one thing.
That scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, I work around, 220 coming off a pole into a house, the drop lines. I mean, that's
they're insulated. There's a difference.
Insulated.
Yeah.
That's different. But when you're working around those wires on top of the fucking poles, I don't know what guys are thinking when they're doing that shit. I honestly don't.
They're not thinking. That's the problem.
That shit might be insulated, but you're still at the mercy of whatever technician put that together. If they screw something up or it's raining and there's moisture in the air.
Yeah, I'm not saying, hey, let's rub our pole up against it or anything. I mean, I'm still cautious, but I mean, I do work around that quite often. But when I'm working, if I have my pole stretched all the way out, or not only my pole stretched all the way out, but if I have an extension on the back, because I use extensions quite often, that's the first fucking thing I'm looking for, is where in the fuck are the power lines at?
Right.
Because I'm not getting. I've changed plenty of light sockets and fucking breakers, and you get bit by electricity, just 110 fuck. That shit hurts. So I can only imagine.
Yeah, when you go into a major power line,
you're going to fuck yourself up royally.
Power jumps, man.
It's awful, man.
Yeah. We JHA everything now too. I don't expect my technicians to be out walking around jobs and looking for dangers and trying to figure stuff out. Everything's blueprinted.
Right.
When that job gets sold, a JHA is happening. We're putting together a danger plan and mitigating everything, and then everything's got checklists. Everything does.
Yeah.
So if there's power lines, my people don't have to figure out how to go do it because we set it up ahead of time and are telling them how to do it. And there's stuff that we'll walk away from. Back in the day, I used to basically play Jenga, or Jenga's not the right word, like operation with an aerial lift going through some crazy lines and stuff that were too close to a building.
Yeah.
And then once I stared backing off the job site, I was just like, we can't do this. I'm not putting an employee up there.
Right.
And there's stuff that we've turned down.
I have a job. It's a 3-story building. I do it inside and out once a year. And they have this fucking octopus on the back of the fucking building. These fucking lines everywhere. And then like 60 feet in the air, there's the high tension fucking lines.
Hear them humming.
Yeah, you could hear this, the transformer, everything's right. This big fucking explosion waiting to happen. And she's like, with these 3 windows, nobody ever does them. Can you do them? I'm like, no. She's like, well, that's kind of a deal breaker for us. I was like, well, then the deal's broke because I ain't fucking doing that. She's like, well, what's the problem? I was like, I tell you what, you don't want those windows cleaned. You have somebody come out, either A, turn the power off, or B, wrap them fucking lines. But either way, I still don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I still don't want to do it. She's like, do you know what that costs? I'm like, yes, I'm aware, but you know what the cost would be.
Right.
You know what the cost would be if I just went ahead and did that? And she's like, what? I was like, it could possibly cost me my life to clean 3 fucking windows in a hallway.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it, lady. Not doing it.
No.
Well,
Jeffrey, I got to say this, and I've spoke to a lot of business owners and met a lot of high-rise guys and everything else. It sounds like you're really running a tight ship.
We're not a normal company, for sure. A lot of it's because we do have the safety training company. So if something happens, we're kind of in the spotlight, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then another difference is I came up a window cleaner. I don't have an MBA. You know, I'm not some CEO. I've had to learn to wear all these different hats and evolve along the way.
Yeah.
So I've been there. I've done it. I've worked alongside of these guys. So I know I don't want to put them in positions. They trust me, you know.
Right.
I've got foremen now who are just amazing, way better than I could ever be. They've got better temperaments than I do. I mean, I used to. We all evolve, but I used to bark at people, you know.
Yeah, this is super pertinent for people that are listening, because it's one thing to be out there like me. I'm in control of my own safety. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm aware of my surroundings because it's just me. But once you start to employ people, I mean, it's imperative that they have a safe work environment doing what we do. You have to be on your mind and your P's and Q's, man, because you got fucking these people have families.
Yeah,
you know
it's a team sport, and we all got a role to play. You know, and when people, like we were talking about cowboys earlier that are just doing crazy shit, we don't want those guys. You know, it's a disrespect for themselves, because if they get taken off the board, their families are starving. It's a disrespect for their teammates, because if they get taken off the board, their company's getting shut down, their people aren't working. Right. You know, it's a disrespect for the company they're working for, because they're going to take them off the board. We tell people we don't want the people out there being brave, because stupid shit happens. We don't want the guy that's going to go score a touchdown and then go into some crazy end zone dance because he's so surprised he scored a touchdown. Right. We want the Pro Bowl player that's going to set the ball down, go back to the huddle, because we're going to do this on you all day long.
Yeah, right.
You know, we're not tourists. We're professionals.
Yeah. That's just like my favorite player, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, I mean, he's not the same running back he used to be after he got injured, but when he scores a touchdown, he don't do no bullshit. He hands the ball to the ref and goes to the fucking sidelines.
Because this ain't nothing.
This ain't shit. I've done this before. Right. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing this shit to you. I can't dance every time, you know what I mean? I like that. But you're right, man. It's that I just hate to see it, man. I hate to see people getting hurt working. You know what I mean? Especially doing what we're doing. You know what I mean? We're cleaning windows, man. To lose your life over a clean fucking window is
right.
You want to do crazy shit? Go rock climbing, right?
Do
shit on your own time.
Yeah, dude. Just relax, you know. But you're right. If you want to do wild shit, there's plenty of wild shit you can do. Go jump out of a fucking plane. Right. You know what I mean? Go bungee jumping. There's plenty of crazy shit to do. You're just cleaning windows. Just clean the windows and go home. You know what I mean? Safely.
You know, I've rappelled off buildings in every single metro in the country, damn near, and I will not go skydiving. I will not go bungee jumping. You won't catch me rock climbing. We're fucking humans. We use we ride elevators. We use tools.
Yeah, I did skydiving once, and I had my window cleaning shirt on, and we got to the ground, and my instructor was like, "I got to ask you a question." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You ever do high-rise buildings?" I go, "Yeah, I used to do them all the time." And he's like, "Man, you got a big set." I go, "A big set? You just leaped out of a plane at 13,000 feet like you were stepping off the fucking curb." He goes, "It's a whole different thing." I go, "Yeah, it is." I go, "I enjoyed the shit out of that, but your job and my job takes a specific type of person that wants to do it." Yeah.
I ain't never jumping out of a fucking plane. No way.
Nah, I'm good.
Only way I'm jumping out of a plane is with a machine gun strapped to my chest, and I'm going to fight the fucking
I told you I did it.
That's it, brother. That's
my father-in-law's bucket list. My father-in-law's bucket list. He asked me if I'd do it with him.
You're a solid fucking guy for doing that. You are.
Yeah,
You're a solid dude for doing that.
It's like in August or something, he's like, "Hey, at the end of the year, I want to fulfill something on my bucket list. What's that?" He says, "We're gonna go skydiving," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And I'm like, "This fucking old man ain't gonna do this."
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I get a gift certificate for Christmas, and I'm like, "This fucking now I can't back out." And I was like, the whole ride up, I'm like, you're looking out the window, and I'm like, this is the dumbest fucking idea I've ever heard of. I mean. There's nothing in me that wants to do this. Now, I will say this. When you hit the ground...
Shit happens, too.
Right. But when you hit the ground, in my head at least, I was like, let's go again. I'll fucking do it right now. But
adrenaline's pumping.
Then I took my younger one, who was 17 at the time, couldn't jump. He had to be 18. When he turned 18, we went again. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. Yeah. So there's a question here. Jeff... You ever do drops on a rolling hook? He called it, but like. So let me.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. You can just kind of sum this, and I want to know your opinion on, the rolling rigs,
Counterweighted beams, yeah.
And something such as the Versa beam that I believe was just reintroduced.
Stupid.
No good.
So, okay. So nowadays, the only manufacturer I know of that has anything on wheels is the Mayos.
Mm-hmm.
But they're built in a way where you can't really roll them because of the structure underneath of them. You're going to hit pipes, and they just don't work very well.
Yeah, they put cross bracing in them.
So, back in the day, when my old man started getting off the ground, he started doing it with a spider stage, which is like a basket it's a cable that wraps underneath of it. So it's a single cable basket.
Right.
And he manufactured basically a parapet wall roller, like a Fitch style, before Fitch existed, out of steel. So we would roll basically with a stage, right?
Yeah.
When Jack Fitch started before he died, and started developing, he came up to Wausau, Wisconsin, out of Iowa, and took a look at that beam, and that's what he used to develop the aluminum parapet wall rollers that would clamp on. So there's when he's saying a rolling hook, that makes me think he means a wall jockey or a parapet wall roller.
Yeah.
There's also Fitch made beams that were in an A-frame style where they were beautiful. We still have a bunch of them, but all the bolts are in compression, nothing's in shear.
Yeah.
So we've taken those on parking decks, counterbalanced them and thrown weights off the parking decks, and they compress and they just bounce and they hold position.
Yeah.
They're magic. Now, back in the day, we didn't know what anchors were. We weren't tied back to shit.
Right.
And we would just overload the back end and we would roll everything,
Right.
So is that now that can still be legal and allowable some state OSHAs don't allow any side to side movement. They keep you inside of a 6-foot zone, such as Minnesota. Federal OSHA allows for it if you're rigged properly, and there's no such thing as a portable anchor. They're just an outrigger that can get you over things or allow lateral movement. You still have to be tied back to anchor systems, a main line and a safety, but I don't want to give all of our tricks away, but there are ways to rig that where you can stay within compliance and do it. Now, we used to do that all the time before water-fed poles came out, because when you were below 7 stories and down, it made sense to have somebody on the roof pushing and somebody hanging, because you're eliminating all those turnaround times to get back up to the roof and re-rig.
Right.
Once you get over 7 stories, the math works out better to have both guys dropping and doing the turnarounds, right?
Yeah.
So once water-fed poles came out, it takes a guy 6 months to a year to become proficient on rope, especially when you're working sideways at speed, trying to work twice as fast to cover the guy above you. Where a water-fed pole, you put one in a guy's hand, and by the end of the day, he's a pro, right?
Right.
So it really took that work away. And so we really don't use them much anymore. You've got to rig back to anchors anyway. And why would you want to carry all that shit to the roof? Just rig back to the anchors and go over the wall.
Right. Well,
especially if you know how to rig.
A lot of problems start when you start to transverse up over secondary, like subroofs. So now you're out here.
If you're pulling them sideways,
right? You're out here, and that's no longer 4 to 1 because you're 5 feet out. You know what I'm saying?
So if you're using a Mayo rig, Mayos are static. Everything from the fulcrum out is always the same distance, and there's different size ones you can buy.
Yeah.
With the Fitch rigs, everything is adjustable. I can change the fulcrum. I can change the angles, big wheels, small wheels. So we set up a policy that you can never go out further than your elbow to your fingertips, which is approximately 2 feet on the biggest people, right?
Yeah.
And you're always putting 300 pounds on the back, no matter what you weigh. So we're overloading the things, and we're always tying back to anchors, right?
Yeah.
So basically, you're not really, the beam is there, and we'll use them as an outrigger to get over like eyebrows and stuff that we've got to clear.
Right.
But the anchors are what we're hanging off of.
Right.
So they're part of the system, but they're not really life support, right?
Right.
And if you're going to roll, you just got to, it depends on the state. You can do it legally if you're rigging properly. Now, in our classes, I do teach how to do that, but I'm not going to. It's kind of magic. I'm not going to give that away.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And you don't like the Versa beam setup?
Why would you need one? What would you use it for?
Well, originally I think it came around when
Originally, they were using them they were calling them portable anchors, right? And so guys were using them on roofs that didn't have anchors as an anchor. And they're lightweight. There's only an 80-pound weight on the back. The fulcrum on them was real small.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can extend them. But now for RDS, you have to have anchors. So for RDS,
so at that point, you don't even need it, right?
You don't need it. You got the anchors. There's no point. Unless you don't know how to rig. I mean, we can rig outside of anchors, inside. We can trap anything between them. And honestly, compliantly, you don't need that many. Like if an engineer put in a party anchor in the middle, put in a 20,000-pound anchor and put 8 different connections or 4 different connections on it, you can rig the whole building. You could put one anchor on every corner of a building, and I can rig the whole thing compliantly.
Right.
That was the old IWC I-14 that used to say you had to be 15 degrees off of an anchor, which the only reason to have that was to put in more anchors.
Right.
You know.
And honestly, most buildings don't want you cutting 48 holes in the roof to put anchors in.
No, they're like $5 to $10 grand a penetration for complete. It's a money grab for sure. And I love anchors, and there's a lot of very good anchor companies out there, but they're not all built the same.
Right.
I use engineering firms more than I do anchor companies now, because usually they'll invite me up onto the roof, and first we'll look for structure. Then we'll look through for bolt-ons before we start looking at penetrations. I get called to do a lot of consulting work for large commercial companies when they're going to put in their fall arrest system. And they'll come in with a plan, and I'll start Xing out anchors and backing them up farther so you can use them in multiple directions.
On different angles,
Yeah.
Right down the middle of the
building. And I'll cut them in half. And like in 15 minutes, I just say, if I cut 30 anchors, I just say do 300 grand.
Right.
And they're like, well, what's your fee? I'm like, I don't want a fee. I want the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We did one. They had cable running around the perimeter wall with these old eye bolts, and the building
fall on those.
Yeah, well, the building sold, and the new owners came in, and I was, it's always nice to be appreciated for something in our industry, because we're pretty much, no matter even if you're doing high rise or the smallest of storefronts or houses, and they called us in and said, the new owners came in and they said, we want to know what would give you a better working environment. And my first thing was anchor points.
Mm-hmm.
I go, you got cable up there that's been, it's never been load tested. I know it would fail a 5,000-pound pull. Okay. It's been done this way for 25 years. And I go, and I'm going to tell you now, it's not going to be cheap, because they're going to want to penetrate the roof. Well, we're not going to let them penetrate the roof. I go, your building is precast. The chances of an engineer certifying precast without giant plates into the elevator room, I said, and they ended up letting them penetrate the roof, because the engineer said,
"That's all I can do."
Yeah, you have no choice here. And the liability factor on this, and they said he's right. I don't care that wall's 5 inches thick; it's still precast. We're not going to load test that; it's going to come apart.
Yeah,
So anyway, it was like $350,000 per building, and there's 2 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just integral on where we wanted them. But like you said, Jeff, move them back, and you can get 3 drops out of each one versus 1 every 6 feet, which is
so. If you've got anchors spread out and you're rigging mainline safety and you're connecting both lines, which is beautiful. I'm going to give this out to the world. You try a couple alpine butterflies, clip your lines together. That will trap your drop point to any drop between those 2 anchors, right?
Right.
And then to re-rig now, all you got to do is change your alpine butterflies. You're not pulling your rope and finding new anchors, right?
Yeah.
So at 90 degrees between that, so you still have independent mainline, independent safety, like OSHA wants you to do.
Right.
But yet you still have industrial rope access from the alpine butterflies down, because if you were to sever either line, you're not going to go into a swing now.
Right.
Because technically both lines are now connected to both anchors.
Right.
And so at 90 degrees, if I was hanging straight from the ceiling, we'll take your friction out of that you were talking about earlier, because we are going to talk physics now.
Right.
If I was hanging from the ceiling and I've got a 90-degree spread and I weigh 100 pounds, I'm putting 70 pounds on each anchor.
Right.
So that's 140 pounds, which is more than I weigh, because you've also got side loading now that's trying to pull those anchors together, right?
Right.
And so we stop at 90 degrees when I'm drawing in lines on an anchor map to give to my teams, because after 90 degrees, you can't see with your naked eye very well. You can actually, at 120 degrees, if I weigh 100 pounds, I'm putting 100 pounds on each anchor. I've effectively doubled my load.
Right.
Because you're pulling them together, right? Now, you talked about your friction before. That does make a difference in our world, and that saves us a lot. But you can't look at that and say, well, it's taking off 40%, and that's taking off 70%. You just don't know, right? So we pretend that it's not there, but technically it's cutting your load in half, right?
But let me ask you this. If the rope is a minimum of 5,000 pound breaking strength, when you side load a rope like that, you significantly reduce that, correct?
Well, your rope isn't. Most ropes are 9 to 12,000 pounds, right?
On the half inch or 7/16?
Well, we used to be on half inch because half inch was 10 to 12, and the biggest 7/16 inch you could get back in the day was, around 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But ropes come a very long way in the last decade. Now we're riding 11 mil, which is 7/16 because there's better gear for it. It's lighter. It performs better. And I believe everything that we use is over 9,000 pounds. You've got 2 of them, right?
Yeah.
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 And so the thing that a lot of people don't think about is when your rope gets wet, which we're window cleaners, our rope is always wet, right?
Right.
So you're losing 30% of your strength right off the top. Unless you're using something like a Black Max, which is water resistant.
That's fast rope though.
That's what we're using now for our mainline exclusively.
I bought some of that, and these guys were like, "Look, we love the new rope. We love that you bought us new rope, but this shit is like, especially through a rack and bar.
Racks are fast anyway.
Oh God, it is like almost into a free fall.
It's crazy, man.
30%
is crazy.
Now it gets worse because you lost your 30% because it's wet. And once you tie your first knot in that line, depending on what you tie, how you dress it, and what it, if you do it right or wrong, you're going to lose anywhere from 25 to 45% more.
So Jeff,
holy shit.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How does the new descenders that everybody's using react to, aside from grit? Nothing used to go up my ass more than guys dragging the ropes across the gravel.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But now, how do they react on a wet rope?
Wet rope slows you down because it's gonna swell up, right?
Yeah.
But washing your rope and keeping your rope clean is very important.
Yeah.
We bag our ropes once they come off a spool. We're never coiling them again because that's going to put memory and twist in them.
Right.
So we bag them, which keeps them out of the dirt and out of the sun, which the UV on ropes is very hard on them, and they get dry and brittle. But we wash our ropes quarterly when we do our in-house gear inspections.
Yeah.
And because if you've got dirt and grit in your rope, that's going to be going through your descender like sandpaper, going through your rope grab like sandpaper, and you're going to significantly reduce the life of those descenders.
And the rope
anyone that's used a water-fed pole,
our descenders work on
that shit grinding, just the dirt grinding in between a water-fed pole clamp will fucking wear it the fuck out. So I can only imagine on gear, safety gear like that. That's a lot of pressure at all.
Well, it makes you nasty too because our descenders work on friction. So as you're coming down the rope, you're wringing it out all over you. Right. So clean rope, you stay cleaner, your gear stays cleaner, things last longer, and things are smoother. Right.
Can I ask how you wash the rope? How do you wash the rope?
We use. Yes, actually, yes.
No shit.
Like a commercial washer?
We've got regular machines in our shop. Because same thing, we're washing our towels and rags in, right?
Okay.
But we use a top loader, and I think I wouldn't want to use a front loader because it'd beat the shit out of it.
Oh yeah.
But a top loader, I don't think our new ones have spindles, but our old ones have the spindle in the middle.
Right.
So you only can do, no matter what length your rope is, you can only do one at a time, or they're going to get tangled up.
Right.
So you're going to chain your rope, and Mark probably knows what I'm talking about, chaining a rope out.
Daisy chain,
right? Daisy chaining it, right.
Yeah.
So you want to chain it out, and then when you layer it in the wash machine, you're going to layer it in back and forth. You're not going to completely circle the spindle, right? Otherwise, when that spindle starts turning, it'll bind up.
It's going to pull in, yeah.
Yeah, but if you layer it in back and forth and fold it in, and then we use like Tide Free and Clear for our towels and our rags, so there's no residues or scents or anything, because you don't want any residue on your detail rags.
Right.
We use the same thing on our rope. You run a load, you take it out, we hang that daisy chained rope up in the shop. By morning, it's ready to be bagged up and go.
Yeah,
if we've got to do
like
a bunch of them at one time,
it dries fast.
At midnight we we load up a van and we send somebody over to the laundromat at midnight and they load them all up at once, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They make little like PVC tees. You can hook
I've
a
seen
hose
those. You
on
put a
them.
hose to it.
They work for shit.
Yeah, dude, you look at that and you're like, I don't even know what it costs, but I remember looking at those. I used to just go up to the laundromat and get a commercial washer, and when no one's looking, drop the rope in there, because they would
I
frown.
know somebody's probably out there thinking this, that's watching this, and it popped in my head. But the first thing that popped in my head is like, you shouldn't do that. Is you should never be tempted to hit a fucking rope with a pressure washer. Am I right?
No,
You'll cut it.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
and you're probably just going to drive dirt and grit into it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Now the sheath the sheath itself is just a protectant for the core,
Right.
and the core is where all your life support and strength is.
Right.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite rope, Jeff?
Right now we're back to New England KM3.
KM3.
Yeah, and Black Max is our main.
So
line.
why are the colors in KM3 faster than the white?
Happy birthday, Diego.
We don't use white anymore. So hey, no. Diego, we don't use white anymore because it just looks nasty. We use the Black Max for our main line, and then we use a safety green color for our safety line. And we never ever ride our safety line ever. It's always brand new. It's always pristine. We might have to replace our main line.
You know what the Florida boys do, right?
They take a 600, bend it in half, and they don't know what size they're using. Yeah, Chicago's doing that. The East Coast is doing that. It's not smart. Once you get into industrial rope access, you don't color code your ropes anymore because you will go back and forth between them, right? Like your main line can become your safety can become your main line, especially in rescues. The rescues that we teach are technically a 3-line rescue. You're always bringing 2 new ropes to the single rope, so your safeties are staying on their fall arrest. You're never going, you're not putting 2 people on one safety. You're sharing your load on a descender, which is built for it. Where in industrial rope access, I'll have to ascend ropes that somebody is already on, or descend ropes that somebody's on. So then their main line becomes my safety becomes their main line. You got to do a pass and do a pick off.
But so in your world, the safeties are never being used unless you would have to.
You want it there for fall arrest, right?
Yeah,
you want it to be pristine. It's going to take a shock load.
And it's interesting, especially since you're using different colors. It makes a lot of sense.
That's why we use different colors.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But I mean, in the smaller companies and the guys I've worked for would never ever consider. You don't understand what I'm saying?
Well, there's a difference between the Army and the Marines and the Special Forces, right?
Right.
We're the Special Forces.
Right. No, I like what you're saying because it makes a lot of sense.
And professionalism in what you're doing does shine through, especially when you're using it to sell jobs.
Right.
You start to property managers and building owners. You start pointing things out, and they understand that you're looking out for their interest as well. The way OSHA is set up now, they've got what's called the multi-employer citation policy. And you can all go Google that and pull it up. But there's 5. It dictates 5 different types of employer, where the contractor coming to the job is 3 of them, would bring in their employees, and the building manager who hired you is 3 of them, and they overlap because you're an employee of who you're working for as well. So if we take a fine or something happens on their building, they're getting a mirroring fine.
Yeah.
And once you go in and start selling that way, where you're pointing out their liabilities and then step by step showing them how you're mitigating them, I mean, we'll take all your work if we come into your metro.
Right. Well, you must have to target Class A buildings because B and C or county. I don't know how good county work is. I mean, about 2 years ago, I got called into our county courthouse, which is like 18 stories, and he's like, "We're taking bids." The chief engineer and building manager called, and I go, "Did you guys ever get anchors on that building? Because I did the construction cleaning on it. Y'all didn't have any anchors." And he's like, "No, and not yet. That's part of the problem." And I'm like, "You'll find someone to do it. It's not going to be me." I go, "You want me to clean the building with the state attorney and everything in it without legal anchor points? I don't think so."
You seem to like to want to lean to that one direction. You just ought to turn your camera a little bit so you can lean where you want to comfortably.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Yeah, but
you always like leaning. You like
Right.
leaning on his right. Just move your camera over a little bit, bud.
Yeah.
And you'd be
Man,
right.
I gotta tell you, after listening to Jeffrey, I was wishing I could go back 20 years, come pay him a visit, and get back on the sit board.
Come on up, Mark. Sit through a class. I'll put you through. I'll comp your class. Come on up and do it.
I would love to. So let me ask you this: I've seen guys here I don't think it's going to catch on, but they're using those, what do they call it, a podium instead of a sit board?
That's industrial rope access style. Yep.
Okay. Are those comfortable?
No.
No.
Well, it depends what you're used to.
No.
It depends what you get used to. A podium, you can install or uninstall it while you're hanging because you're still hanging from your descender.
Yeah.
And then it will hook into the carabiner below your descender. Then you're basically cinching it up to take some of the pressure off of your harness, right?
Right.
So because of that, it's got a very narrow gap. So when you're directly connected to your rope, and if you're in a state where you're allowed to pendulum, and we swing our asses off, and the farther you can reach, the less drops you do, right?
Right.
So once you get into a seat board, you've got some distance and some elevation. Now we're still getting a second point of contact by dropping a leash through to our harness.
Yeah.
But now when I get out to my pendulum, I can roll out another 2-3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
can just turn.
And when you're on a seat board, I can put my bucket and my tools. I got more places for gear, and it doesn't tilt me over and pull down on me. And that's what happens with a podium. Now, podiums are great for a lot of industrial rope access because you're getting into a position and then you're doing work in one position, right?
Yeah.
So after some time, you might get some harness fatigue. You can throw one on, kind of change your position, throw on a rope or a handle ascender with a foot loop, and you basically create a recliner to sit there, right?
Right.
Where as window cleaners, we're on rope all the time. Constantly down rope. I mean, window cleaners put on more rope hours than any other industry out there.
Yeah.
And so that podium makes a big difference. I'm sorry, that seat board makes a big difference.
Right.
Now, if I'm going into a rescue or something or doing some technical stuff, I'll just go straight harness, you know, and go. But I'm a level 3 Sprat tech and been on rope for a long time. We used to use the seat boards with the big pads on them.
Yep.
Especially when we were rolling sideways, because there's times you'd go over the wall and your feet wouldn't hit the ground until lunch.
Yeah.
And you go over the wall after lunch and your feet don't 4 hours. Your feet don't hit the ground till the end of the day.
Yeah.
But now we're doing everything with straight drops.
Right.
So a 2-hour drop is long, right?
See, I learned on a 4-point chair, and then I hired guys that came in with the 2-point or the.
We use the 2-point, yeah.
And I noticed they had so much more mobility on the 2-point. I just didn't like the feeling that it was pitching and rolling when you moved on the, you know what I'm saying?
You get your sea legs under you.
Yeah, the guy that hired me had an old Sky Genie, basically a piece of plywood with 2 slots in it, and then had a big strap that went through it. And I always like to hang my bucket in the chair, not from a rope. That's the way I learned. It's hard to change. But with this chair, you'd hang your bucket on it. The chair would literally stand straight up like this. You'd have to climb over and get it bounced. And you never sat straight. You know what I'm saying? Because once you sit down, it locks itself in. And then I bought my first chair, which was a 4-point, and I ran that for years. And then, like I said, I started my company, started hiring guys. They all show up with 2-point chairs. Yeah. And I'm like, there's something to that,
So somebody in your audience that wants to be industrious and go make a whole lot of money, start manufacturing a 2-point chair where the straps have buckles so they're adjustable.
Yeah.
Right. The manufacturers never used to want to do that because the seat boards were life support. But now that we're dropping a leash from our descender to our harness, we could cut the straps away on that seat board and still be hanging from our descender.
Right.
So seat boards are no longer life support. They're just there for comfort and utility. Right. So somebody go out there and start manufacturing a seat board that's got adjustable straps, and even write in your manufacturer's instructions that you need to maintain 2 points of contact, and it's not life support.
I think the big issue, Jeff, is not so much the engineering and the design. Someone could sit with you, or you could probably do it yourself. You're very knowledgeable. Is the product liability on a piece of equipment like that?
Yeah.
Once you take it out of life support, the product liability is gone.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So the biggest fine that OSHA gives is called, or the most common fine that they give is called a general duty clause violation. That's for using a piece of equipment outside of the manufacturer's instructions. Right. So you're always required to follow the manufacturer's instructions for use unless you're under the training, supervision, and direction of a qualified person, which I am.
Yeah.
So when we get those seat boards, first thing we do is cut the weight straps off of them.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable doing that because we don't use them for life support.
Right.
We're connected directly to our descender.
A lot of guys tuck them away. I've always just cut them off and burn. I know exactly what you're saying.
We cut them off because back in the day, guys when they would access their seat board, they would hook up their descender, hook up their light, their grab, put their bucket on their board, basically roll off the roof.
Yeah.
And flop into, we call it flopping, right? Flopping into it. With racks and shit, they would get all discombobulated. There was a problem. The real issue is, okay, I'm over the wall. If I need to get back up, you've basically got to do a muscle up, right? To get back up, which you can do, but it's a pain in your nuts for sure.
Yeah.
So now we access in a much cleaner way where we're pre-rigging our board over the pinch point. We're in fall restraint on one rope grab, which is a separate fall restraint line, the third line. Then we're taking our fall arrest line, putting in so we're on 2 rope grabs now. So with your feet on the roof, that makes 3, right? 3 points of contact. Now, when I move my feet over and step on the board, I've lost that point of contact, but I've maintained 2.
Yes.
So, and the reason you like to do that, because now I'm standing on my board. So I'm weighting the system and I can see over the roof. And if something, like if a rope is coming in contact with something, or a carabiner has twisted and cross-loaded, or there's something I don't like, I can just step back up over on the roof, go address it, and then re-engage my system.
Right. That happens. Yeah. I mean, it's not common, but it does happen. But we called it wall jumping. And then I had guys come to me and go, a lot of guys strap themselves to the chair and then, like you said, roll over the wall. But with a rack and bar and everything, and we were only running 1 safety, not 2 at the same time, it does tend to get tangled and cumbersome just to get that first over the wall.
Once you're standing on your board now, you're still in fall arrest and your fall restraint line, right?
Right.
So now I can slide into my board, take a comfortable position, and then I will take the leash that's hanging below my descender and hook it into my harness.
Yeah.
So now I'm back to 3 points. I can remove, and my fall restraint line is only long enough to get me here. Now I can disengage that rope grab, take it with me, throw that rope back up on the roof, and I've never left 2 points of contact.
That's awesome.
Which is industrial rope access style, right?
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's cleaner and it's safer. They used to call it chair jumping because people weren't creating a second point of contact.
Right.
And so you were on 1 point stepping over. Well, technically, by RDS rules, you only need to be on 1 point of contact, which scares the shit out of me, because bosun's chair work came basically from the maritime industry. The old block and tackle guys on the sides of ships, right? And what happened were ships were getting dry docked in Chicago. And these sailors, these maritime sailors, merchant marine, were taking their bosun's chairs to buildings and to get work because they were dry docked. And they started making Noah Peterson's family, Noah runs the window cleaning history stuff now.
Yeah.
They're like 4th or 5th generation.
Oh yeah.
And that's where they came from.
Back.
Yeah.
Early 1900s.
Yeah. So when they started regulating bosun's chair work, they saw it as a swing stage. Right? Just a small swing stage.
Right.
So when you're on a swing stage, you're standing on the platform and you have a life support line. Yeah. Your feet standing on the platform count as a point of contact, and your life support line was your second point. So on seatboards, and there were a lot of deaths from this, and because people didn't understand the second point, where you could slide right out of your board.
Yeah.
And you were really only on 1 point because you're just sitting on it. Right. You were really only on 1 point of contact, which was your fall arrest line.
Yep.
Until the late 90s, when Spratt started up and brought industrial rope access to the country, IRAD already existed, but they were off on oil rigs and shit, right? When Spratt came to the table, that's when we started moving a lot of industrial rope access techniques to exterior building maintenance and to the RDS world, and it's changed everything.
So let me ask you this, Jeffrey, because I know what my opinion is. I'm really interested in what you have to say, and the reason I would be concerned about this is the amount of training that goes into using this piece of equipment versus going through a class such as yours or following the direction that you've put out here tonight. These rope climbing
power descenders,
yes.
Yeah.
What the thing is with that, before you go off, because I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
It seems to me that you could take a guy who's got a set on him, hook that up, give him minimal training, and let him pull the trigger up and push the trigger down, and he can access things. I have a huge issue because I'm just not seeing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, working a descender is a hell of a lot different than pulling the trigger on a drill motor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They've come a long way. They're still pricey, but there's a lot of companies that have them. We use them. I think you can even rent them at Sunbelt now.
Yeah.
But so RDS, or the way I train, is not unique. No matter what industry you're in, construction, painting, whatever, before you allow your employees to do anything, they've got to be trained by a qualified person, and you've got to document it. A lot of people aren't doing that. They're just flying under the radar, but those things are no different. You'd have to follow the manufacturer's instructions, get training on it, and use it. And they're set up in a way where your liability would be covered.
Right.
I think they're very safe. For window cleaning, they're good in areas where you don't have top access, but you can still rig something. Or like we would use them on a building where if you've got to walk, for an hour and a half around a building to get back up to a roof or something. I mean, those turnaround times add up, right?
Right.
So we could put a set of ropes centrally, and then you can access back up to the building.
Right.
And then you've got to be trained to get over your pinch point again. And some of them can be run remotely.
Right.
There was a building that we were doing in Minneapolis for a while where there was like 4 or 5 lanes of traffic that went under the building. Right. So you couldn't hang your ropes in the traffic space. And once you got down to the bottom of your drop, you had to get back up. At that time, the power descenders were priced pretty high yet. They're prohibitive.
Right.
So we used a Harkin rigger's winch, and that way I could move the winch from guy to guy, clip it back to anchors.
Right.
Now, your winches by OSHA are not for man support, but you can use to lower, lift, and raise and get position.
Right.
So we would stay on our main line, stay on our safety, and then drop a third line to them on that rigger's winch, and we'd pull them up, and all you got to do is recapture your rope as you go, right?
Right.
And so you're drinking coffee, walking up the side of the building.
So even if it fails or there's an issue, you're still.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's just a third point.
It's interesting. But what I'm pointing at is I had a little experience discussing it with someone, and it seemed to me that the guys that were going to ride these things weren't very well qualified. Because
it sounds like a company problem, not a tool problem.
Yeah, but it just seems to me that it's just like, okay, if a guy goes out, and TJ sees it every day as much as I do, a pressure washer becomes a window cleaner, and he goes out and buy a water-fed pole and thinks that doesn't make you a window cleaner, no matter what you spend on it. And I'm kind of thinking that if you're going to do RDS, you need to know every single aspect of it, just like you should know every single aspect of window cleaning.
As an employer, and if you're an owner operator, you're employing yourself, and you're still an employee of the building that you're working for. Any tool that you put in somebody's hand, or any skill that you have them doing, training is required. Documented training is required.
Right.
And so if there's guys out buying them, I mean, they're being idiots for sure.
Yeah.
If there's guys putting them in employees' hands and using them without training, they're just asking for trouble.
Right. It's only a matter of time. Yeah.
And, and if employees were worried about, employees go blow whistles if you need to, right?
Right.
If you don't feel safe doing something, don't do it.
Right.
Nobody can make you do anything, and your life is way more important than whatever, Joe Blow above you says.
Right.
These things are in place for a reason. And these operators are able to operate because they've got people intimidated, and they don't think they can do things about it, right?
There's a question in the comments about are there any differences between your class and Mike's classes?
I've never been through one of Mike's classes, so I couldn't answer that question. We've been around. I think we were the first one out there by several years.
He does speak very highly of you. I'm sure you guys, though you're competitors in a specific.
Yeah,
can you really be competitors in safety?
I've always promoted. Even back when I was the only person out there, I was like, there's going to be more at some point, and I promote that because it just. A rising tide raises all ships. It raises everybody's professionalism. The industry's changing, and it's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
I will never badmouth people, especially publicly. Right.
Yeah.
But they're doing good things. I think Jorge's out there doing some training. He's doing good things. He's really hitting the Spanish-speaking market.
Yeah.
But now there's even so many more companies that are. A lot of the industrial rope access companies are training RDS now. Desert Rigging Specialties is ENSA, Elevated Safety. There's so many people out there, right? We still keep offering it, one, because we're doing it at a very affordable price for people. I have a passion for it, and I want the industry to be safe because I'm a lifetime window cleaner myself, right?
Right.
And we're able to bring real world knowledge to the table from our experience. We've got kits dialed in. So I tell a lot of horror stories in classes that I'm very familiar with of things that have happened.
But you hear that story when we did our last year's March Madness, where I forget his name, but his ropes got burned through from a fireplace exhaust on the side of a building.
That was Chris Ayers. He used to work for me. Was Chris Ayers on your webcast?
Was it Chris? Yeah.
Chris was my foreman when he came from Seattle, and I still tell his story in class.
That story.
Unfortunately, we had to part ways for some reasons I won't discuss publicly.
Yeah.
Then he went to work for some competition in town. He still works there, I think. And Draper was working for them, and so Draper picked him up as my ex-employee.
So I got another one for you, Jeffrey. Do you still clean windows at all, or are you running these 3 companies?
I haven't touched a squeegee to clean a window in probably 5 years. 3 years, probably 3 years. After COVID, we basically turned over our entire operational staff, right? And that's one of the through this part of the time frame where me and Chris had to part ways. So when I was retraining, I was back out there as a foreman leading from the front, which I don't like doing because I'm a lifetime window cleaner. I'm a lifetime rope guy. I'm pretty damn fast. Around the country even, and I show a lot of technique, but I tend to lead from the front, and I get frustrated when people can't keep up, right? Which they shouldn't be able to. So I was quick to put other foremen in place who have a much better temperament than I do. They're more lovey, and they're going to give you hugs and stuff, right? And that's what I need. I need a buffer between my operational people and myself, and I've got several layers of that now. I've evolved. We all do. But back when we started in the late 80s and 90s, it was a totally different world. And nobody grows up and says, hey, I want to be a window cleaner, right? So the guys I was working alongside of were pretty rough. I was just a young kid working for my family. And a lot of the people I was working alongside of were real rough ex-felons, drug addicts, drunks that basically couldn't get into construction companies or washed out of them. So it was very machismo, a lot of barking at people, a lot of testosterone, right? It's now it's a different world because of industrial rope access and gear. Most of my people, I love them to death. They geek out on this stuff, right? They get together and play Dungeons and Dragons during the week. They're coming in the shop and they're giving each other hugs and stuff, right? We've got the most beautiful company culture now, which it's not because of me. It's because of my foreman and my staff that have just been able to change this. I can't relate to these young kids. I'll start talking to them and they'll start crying. Where, I just want to be loved. And now we've got, I've learned to more and more, but I've got a very diverse staff. I've got more women on rope now than I've ever had. I think we've got 4 women on rope.
Wow.
Wow. And they're awesome. One of them is just fantastic, and they're all just fantastic, really. But it's just a different dynamic now, And I love it. It's just my job now is to, one, make sure that they're all safe and doing the right thing, make sure they have work in front of them and they have a career path that they can keep advancing in. And because we don't want this to be a dead end job. We want we want you forever. We want to support your families. We want your kids to come work here.
Yeah. In your defense, at a certain age nowadays, like there's a different kind of work ethic than we grew up with, you know what I mean?
For sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, when I was working construction, if you didn't bring the mortar mix back the proper way, they throw a fucking brick at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, and that was like standard. You know what I mean? So
we used to haze that shit out of each other.
That was hazing on the site at all fucking times. You know, so
throwing rocks in the new guy's bucket all day long, and he doesn't know it, and it just keeps getting heavier. He doesn't know what to empty his bucket at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Throwing dead squirrels and birds and shit in there.
I worked for a guy that we hate. We found this stuff. My brother at the time was still in high school, and he worked at a department store, and he brought home this, like a Ziploc bag of this crystal, looked like coarse salt, right? And he goes, watch this, and he dumps some water on the floor, and you throw the stuff on, it turns into a jelly, almost like Jello, right? It's a spill absorber, right? So I go, can you get me some of that? And he gave me and I mean, like, the size in your hand will pick up a big spill, right? So I get this Ziploc bag of this shit, and my boss, he was one of those window cleaners, and I can't stand this, I think TJ will relate, that had 40 squeegees in the bucket. You couldn't even dip the fucking mop, and he had scrapers and stickers, wool, and everything in that bucket, right? So he pulls up, it was a Friday, to give us our paycheck, and I told the guy that trained me for High Rise Down, I go, hey, distract him for a minute, watch this. So he goes, hey, is this scratch in the side of your truck? So he walks around, and I dump this powder into the bucket, not knowing what it was going to do in a bucket. It's made to pick up a spill. Next thing I know, the bucket is literally overflowing in the bed of the bucket. It was erupting. I'm trying not to laugh, right?
Right.
And he goes, what the fuck did you put in my bucket? I'm like, I don't know. Where were you? He's like, well, I cleaned the inside of this place. I go, well, something in that must have reacted with your soap. I don't know. He literally took the bucket out of the truck and turned it upside down, and nothing happened.
I think the funniest one I ever saw hazing thing was one guy took another guy's wand or mop, whatever you guys call it, applicator, and took the cover off and just loaded it full of Dawn on the inside of it, and then stuck it back on, right?
Yeah.
So the guy's like over soaped. He tries rinsing it out, and the soap just never comes out. He's rinsing it out, and he just can't figure it out, because nobody thinks that there's soap inside their cover, right?
Right.
And you could rinse it for an hour, and the soap just keeps pouring out of it.
It's
hilarious.
Our thing was always, we used to, like, one guy would, like, every time we bust out the 40 or something like that, we'd always have a guy footing it. And the guy that usually went up the ladder always would get a wet mop right in his ass crack every fucking time. As soon as he got Jeremy got me every time. I got him every time. Anybody that went up the ladder first, I'm putting a dot right in the center of their asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Motherfucker.
That same guy, when I worked for him, I remember we were cleaning the inside of a J.C. Penney's, right? And they had these columns that had mirrors on all four sides of the columns. We had to clean all these, like 100 columns for mirrors, right? So we're there before hours. I'm walking behind him. Now, at that time, squeegees were brass handle and brass channel. So I used to take tennis racket tape and put it on the handle of the squeegee. It's like a cloth tape, right?
Yeah.
It just make it more comfortable. Well, what happens over time is I wrap it real thick. What happens over time, the glue starts to come out of the tape. Yeah. And you could wad it up like a ball of gum, right?
Yeah.
So it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. We're walking through this J.C. Penney, and he made me carry his bucket. I got his bucket, and I'm rolling the squeegee handle in my holster in my hand, and I finally pull off this big wad. It was like a giant, like 3 pieces of bubble gum, right? And I was just being stupid. He got about 10 feet in front of me, and I whipped that ball of glue, and it hit him right in the back of the head, right? Well, lucky there was a guy buffing the floors, because he immediately took his hand and matted it into his hair, right? And he stopped. He's like, what the fuck was that? I go, I don't know. It must have flung up off that floor buffer. Dude, the next day he had a bald spot. I think I stayed at that job so long because of things like that, you know.
We got fucking like, I don't know. I think it was this earlier this spring. We my cousin had a couple of junk pickup trucks, right? Sitting out back. So what we did was we went and we robbed the horns off of one of the trucks, and we wired it to a pigtail,
to the brake light,
brake lights, and we took a magnet, stuck it underneath the truck. Fucking dude, We hooked it to back of, we call him Uncle Donnie. We hooked it up to the back of his fucking truck. He had no idea. The look on his face. This is a brand new F-150, like platinum. It's a beautiful truck. He was so fucking pissed off at us. He would probably, if he would have been any younger, he probably would have fought us. That's how fucking bad. We got him so fucking good, dude. Fighting pissed. Or or take a piece of rubber hose just long enough to where when you're driving slow, you don't hear it, but as soon as you speed up, it starts fucking banging on the bottom of the truck.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. We fucking all the time. It's always something. What they used to do to me all the time was I would pull up back there behind Universal and I'd be stop in for whatever, I'd be like putting something on the board, like I need a pressure washer or a lift or something like that. I'd leave, get to a job site, and my fucking ladders would be zip tied to the ladder rack. That shit used to piss me off so fucking bad, dude. Yeah. Oh, that used to make me mad. Well, no, what they would do is they would zip tie the back, and I would clip the back and get it off. So then they graduated to the front and the back, so they zip tie it twice, and then they got wise and started putting fucking aluminum zip ties on the motherfuckers. So
pipe clamps.
Yeah. So I'd have to fucking have wire cutters to get the. Oh, dude, you talk about fighting pissed. I almost got in a fight because the thing is this went on for 2.5 years. They wouldn't fess up to who was doing it. So anytime I would say something about it, they would blame someone else. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped one guy that works for my cousin Mike. I fucking saw him at a red light and got out of the truck. I wanted to fight him. I was so fucking mad, dude. Oh, I was so mad.
That's what I miss about working for someone,
Just
I had so much fun.
Yeah, the pranking and shit. I'll be honest with you, man. The time that I spent up there on Saturday mornings, a couple hours here and there on every other week or something like that. That's a good time to go and be around people just like this podcast, just to bust balls and you know what I mean, be social. Because I'm fucking by myself a lot of the time, working 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a fucking day by myself.
It gets tedious, doesn't it?
Yeah. So,
keeping yourself motivated.
It's rough.
So Jeffrey, at let's just say, I know you started as a teenager, but when you start to get direction, 18, 20, you start to realize this is your life as a window cleaner. Did you ever think it would get to where it is today?
Absolutely not. I never saw this path, and actually, I hated it as a kid. I didn't have respect for it.
Yeah.
I got away from it for a while. I got into sales. I did some other things. When I was in school, I did some factory work and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the more other stuff you do, the more it makes you fall back in love with window cleaning.
I think the freedom of it is even if you're an employee, the freedom of it. Like the guys that work for me, I've always figured if I gotta babysit you, then I don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the schedule, these are the buildings, this is the order they're doing them in. I'm not gonna show up every day. You know what you're doing. Let me know when you're on to the next. And I had it really good for a while, and then it grew to where I had, 6 or 7 people, and I felt like this is where the management that you probably have, Jeffrey, comes in. Is I felt like I was running a circus, and I didn't sign up to be a ringleader.
Yeah, systems changes that.
Yeah.
We document and systemize everything, and everything's got checklists. There's burnout for sure. Especially when I was starting up my company. For the first 10 years, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. We'd be up north of Minneapolis knocking out a building, that would take us 12 hours. We'd jump in a van, drive down to Cincinnati through the night, sleep for an hour, and start knocking out more buildings. It got old fast, and just you burn out.
Right.
In hindsight, you learn a lot, and I would do things a lot differently. Getting to where we were is more about my personal evolution, than working hard. Because you have to learn to systemize and then step back, wear the next hat, become a student of that next hat, systemize, step back. You're constantly becoming a student of a different skill set.
I think the part of it is, because we've talked about this on the podcast before, delegating out that, you come from a family of window cleaners. So when all of a sudden Jeffrey's been cleaning these places for 20 years, now he's going to put it in the hands of an employee that's just collecting a paycheck. it's very, you look at each account, think small, that they're family to you, basically. You understand what I'm saying? And then allowing them to go take that customer on a course that might not necessarily be yours is a huge hurdle for most people.
That was a bigger deal on the residential side. Because when I started on my own, I was doing residential. I didn't have pockets to get into high rise.
Yeah.
You know, I started out knocking on neighbors. I didn't have any pockets. I mean, I had left the company that I was working for, which was my dad, sold out. We didn't know, and new owners came to the table one day.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to work for them. You know, I'm going to go start my own thing. I didn't have a savings. I had a mortgage. I had a 5-year-old daughter, and it was really desperation. You know, I had to go back to my roots when I was a kid. Mowing lawns and shoveling driveways, and just it's humbling to go door to door knocking on people's doors. Hey, can I clean your windows? Right. And when you build up clientele on the residential side where they get to know you personally.
Right.
And then when you start sending somebody else, it is a big deal.
Oh, it's huge.
But once you pull yourself off and they get used to random people coming, but the customers, but there's times where people say, hey, you know, the last team you sent out, they were so awesome. I want that team again. And we'll do that whenever we can. But we have turnover, and that's not always going to be possible. You know, it just, that comes down to systemizing again, so that the same product is getting put out that you want to be put out.
Right. The end result. Exactly.
And some of that's, you know, systemizing the customer service. You know, the lead's going to go up to the door. This is what he's going to recite. You're going to go through the checklist with the client. Hey, is this what you want done? Do you want to add anything else on? The follow-up, you know, you're making sure your residential team are very people, right?
So are your guys cross-trained, meaning some high-rise guys go do houses? Or
sometimes. Oh, that got turned out. Sometimes. We typically, when we bring people in off the street that don't have experience, we use residential and small commercial as a training ground.
Right.
And then once they've got a skill set, they can squeegee with both hands, they can use a stick, you know, properly. They've got ladder safety, rooftop safety, water fed pole safety, pressure washer safety. They get in the habit of the checklist and the safety.
Stick.
Yeah.
You know a dude is old when he says stick.
You know, even when we started getting water-fed poles, I was putting traditional tools on them and mopping and squeegeeing and bringing them down.
Right.
Because it's one and done. And if you got the skill set, you're not leaving shit behind. You know, and you're closing shit out.
I just think it's, you know, because my grandfather used to call it a stick. Man, that stick you got's pretty fancy.
Well,
and then the old dude that I run into downtown all the time, he's like, man, I love that stick. I gave him a stick. I gave him a trad pole. I gave him my green trad 12. He was sitting in the shop. I was like, here, man. He's like, no. I was like, yeah, I want you to have a really nice stick. This is the nicest stick I've ever had. Just old time. He's a cool ass dude. But
when you start out in northern Wisconsin and you start out running route, we actually used wooden poles.
Right.
Because aluminum poles would freeze your fucking hands off.
Which is technically a stick. It's definitely a stick.
It was a stick.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm just saying, you're an old dude.
Even when we
what I'm getting at is you're fucking old.
What's that?
I said what I'm getting at is you're fucking old. You're
old. 51 is pretty old, yeah.
I'm just saying,
I've been
you're
cleaning
only 6
windows
years
for
older than
38.
me, dude.
They're almost, probably 40 plus years at this point, you know. Wow. So I was a pretty young kid, yeah.
Man, I've been in the business
that long. I haven't been
an absolute lifetime essentially doing this. That's crazy, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm jealous. You know, I wish I would have started up my own company as a 20-year-old. I'm really jealous of these young guys.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we'd start up a company, everybody had to reinvent the wheel autonomously.
Right.
You didn't have the networks and the connections.
Right.
But, you know, social media actually fired up when I started up, like in 08, 09, right?
Right.
Then now you can reach out. All the knowledge is at your fingertips.
Right.
And there's an app for everything. You can run your payroll through an app. You can run your HR through an app, your timelines, whatever you want.
Right. The only thing that you can't there isn't an app for is personality and fucking motivation. Those are the only two
I don't know, man. AI is coming a long way.
Maybe. But you got to be able to get out of fucking bed to make it happen. And
you start making robots that smile at you, we got a problem.
Right. Yeah. That's true, man. That's true. Man, 40 fucking years cleaning windows, dude. That's out of control, man.
So what's your longest, like, do you have any accounts that your dad did? Like, do you have an account that's been with you you've been cleaning for 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Like,
not really, because when he started out, it was in central Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You were saying that
I'm
before.
I'm about like 2 hours north in Madison, which he eventually moved down to. And I was, my integrity is important to me. And so when I started up, he was still tied up with the company that he had sold for a couple of years to keep their profit margins up and stuff. So I completely stayed off of their toes, right? I didn't come after anything. And then when I first started going after work that they had, he was already separated from the company, and they were public request for bids, right? So I was bidding against like 5 other companies that were all coming to the table.
Right.
Now I did have an in because I've done those jobs. I knew how they worked out. I knew the man hours. I knew the contacts, and we had personal relationships.
Right.
I have a lot of accounts that they first did when they came down to Madison. But we do a lot more for them. Like we do a lot of university stuff that we've had for a very long time. We do a lot of government stuff that we've had for a very long time. There are some jobs where they've had turnover of their staff that I've been through generations of. Like I'm telling them how things work when the new property manager comes in, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. There's jobs where, I had this one very large project here in Madison that's kind of an iconic place that I had done after with my company, and I had done before with my dad's company, and they're like, this is awesome. It's like we have the same people in here. You've been here forever. Mm-hmm. And this woman who ran the show, we had a great relationship, but then she had an underling that was kind of moving up under her, and that guy was just a prick. Yeah. He's one of those people that just did everything he could to make our life hard and would needle, and have all these, have a startup and shut down because he was just screwing with us. Mm-hmm. And when she was still there, I would just go to her. I would kind of ignore the guy, go to her. She'd straighten it out, and it was always fine. Well, until she retired, and then he bumped up, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish this contract out, which I think was a 3 or 5 year deal. And but when it's done, I'm done. I'm not going to rebid this project. Yeah. So we didn't. And then we get a phone call. Hey, are you guys going to turn in a bid? We'd really like a bid. So I doubled my numbers and turned them in. Right. And then the company that, obviously we didn't get it, and the company that did got kicked out of the contract within like a year or two because I didn't like them. So I went out to bid again. And they're like, hey, are you going to give a bid? I tripled my number and turned them in. Yeah. And then my other contacts are calling me, hey, this place is calling and doing background on you, I'm like, no way. My numbers are triple what they should be, that they're even thinking about bringing us in there. Right. But, eventually the numbers get big enough where we call it bullshit money or PIA money, right? Where it finally gets worth it because you're just charging them through the nose.
Right.
They never asked you as a company why the numbers changed?
Well, they know why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they know why. They knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
They know I don't want to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is like I had some buildings,
man.
I had some.
We make it up with other work.
Right. Well, I'm saying the relationship. You know what I mean? You do something somewhere I've actually had a similar experience. I mean, I'm not a high-rise guy, but I do have accounts that I've had for even before I bought the business that belonged to the company before I bought it. You know what I mean? So I've been doing them for years. And that's very same thing. You have this relationship with one person and it's great. And you know what I mean? There's no issues. And then there's always that person underneath them that occasionally you have to deal with. They're fucking assholes. And then they get in their spot and they're like, now I'm going to stick it to you. And I just you know what? Fuck this. I'm not dealing with this shit.
In large commercial, the property managers or building managers have a lot of turnover these days. Right. And it's kind of a big merry-go-round. Like you want to keep these relationships because a lot of times when they go work for the next company, they'll take you with them and you'll pick up a portfolio. Yes. And we don't bid single buildings anymore. We bid portfolios. Right. We go after a property management company and we're going to pick up 5 to 15 buildings, right? Mm-hmm. So you want those relationships, but then it goes the other way too. Typically when somebody comes in that you don't know, it's like they always want to prove themselves. Yeah. So they're putting things out to bid. They're looking for ways to cut money. Mm-hmm. They're bringing contractors in from other cities.
Yeah. My father always used to say, and it took me half my life to figure out what it meant. And it wasn't until I was in business for myself that he used to say, a new broom sweeps clean. Okay. So now I had buildings pre-COVID for 23 years. been through 3 or 4 management companies, and I'm still standing. The problem is, you get a few percent every year increase. Okay. And then what happened here in Palm Beach was a billionaire came in and bought everything. I'm not kidding you. They bought 17 buildings in downtown area and are building currently 3 or 4 right now as we speak. That was right after COVID. So when things started, I mean, I cleaned those buildings all through COVID. At the end of COVID, when all this acquisition started, because, here in South Florida, about every 5 to 7 years, things went haywire, meaning management changed. I'm sure you've seen that. Like all of a sudden, 3 buildings that you clean are all now different management. And, they can look in the filing cabinet and see we've been here for 20 years. So that holds some water. But again, going back to the new room sweeps clean. Well, what happened here was they bought every building I had in downtown Palm Beach, some of them as much as 25 years.
Wow.
Okay. So then they started building all these more high-rise buildings, which are still some of them going up. And they're like, you play your cards right, you're going to have all of it. And I go, yeah. Now I'm smarter than I said, here's what's going to happen. Once they corner the market, both residentially and commercially in the office buildings, then they're going to want every vendor to sharpen the pencil because you know where I'm going.
They got power,
right?
yeah.
Right. All of a sudden they're like, well, we can go back to 1990 pricing because we're going to take 25 buildings and give them to one company. I mean, guys are driving 100 miles from Miami to do buildings that I was doing that are 10 miles from my house.
Right.
I don't know how you do it, Mark. Like a lot of people from up north always have the dream, in the wintertime, I'm going to go down to Florida and clean windows, right?
Right.
Well, back in the day, I went down and I've done a bunch of pricing and, and did that sort of thing. We can't work down there.
Yeah.
I can't pay my people.
Well,
I can't. Yeah.
Exactly because of that, Jeff. So what it is, a lot of, I always look at it, I watch people that retire and they usually make it, unless they never have to work again or they're very comfortable, for the most part, they make it 2 to 3 years and then they find something to do. So we get a lot of transplants from New York and up north that sell their businesses because they get a better value up there. At least they did in the past. I don't know what's going on now with the market for selling a service business, and then they come down and they start to itch after 2 to 3 years. And they're like, well, I really don't need the money, but I need something to do. And next thing you know, they're out there and they're a threat, because we're a very transient state. But you're right. I mean, I know guys that have moved out of South Florida and moved to Boston, Upper Sethers and whatnot. And they're like, you're not going to believe this. The Office Depot, you get $75 a month for it. Yeah. He goes, it pays $350 here for the same service. I'm like, well, I grew up, this is all I know. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all I know. So you got to hustle. Here in South Florida, you got to hustle. But it got to a point now with, like the one company that bought everything up, I started working for them because I knew that the gauntlet was, the guillotine was going to chop me up. And the first job I did for them, which was a 20-story, at 120 days, I'm calling them. We have 30-day terms. What's going on here? Oh, you didn't start the other building yet. Well, we're not talking about the other building. I need to get paid for this one. You know what I'm saying? I don't live on a credit line. I got to pay it, just like you said.
We've been there.
And then it gets to a point where that's when I just threw my hands up.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm done.
That
I was going into downtown Chicago for a while. And when I first went down there, we were a pretty young company yet. And the Cook County is the county that the main part of Chicago sits in. And there was an RFB for the Cook County contract, which was all their courthouses, their towers, their prison buildings. It was a portfolio of like a dozen plus buildings. And I went down there thinking, I'm never going to get this, but I want to do this for a learning experience. So I went through all the walkthroughs, looked at everything, put my numbers together, and damn if we didn't get the thing. So then we had to do it. But that was on 120-day terms for really big projects.
Yeah.
And so it gets out to like 6 months, we're not paid yet. It gets out to 9 months, we're not paid yet. And then people tell us, oh, that's why they're hard to work for. They damn near bankrupted us.
Well, your own customers can put you out of business. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We quit doing any work for any government agency in Chicago after that. We actually don't even work in downtown Chicago anymore because the logistics suck. We do a lot of stuff in the burbs, but not downtown anymore.
What's that? I forget it. Now his name doesn't stick. He's in Chicago. a good sized head on him. What's his name? He's a high rise guy. It'll come to me. I don't really talk to him much anymore. But he came to
something. You were saying something earlier about, and I just wanted to reiterate that working with different property managers and getting a good relationship with a property manager. There's a guy that I got hooked up with at Target that ended up working at one of the nursing homes that I still do. That ended up working at the mall that I still do. That ended up working at another place that I still do, and he just goes from job to job to job. And calls me every time to do windows.
And you're like, keep hopping, buddy. Keep hopping.
Just keep doing your thing, dude.
Yeah. You know what happened here was, though, when that company came and bought all the buildings up, about 40% of the chief engineers and building managers that I worked with for 20 years that, like, you would know, bring you from building to building to building to building, and you usually keep the one that you lost because they're no longer there.
Right.
All of them are gone.
That sucks.
And now they got a bunch of 25-year-old polo shirt wearing kids that don't. One of the buildings that we put lighting in the lobby, you had to climb around on an I-beam. We set up the fall restraint systems, and we go out and changed all their lights from, they were originally like a halogen, now they're LED, and then 10 years later they start failing. So I no longer clean the windows there, but they called because they saw the paperwork that we had done and said, well, how did you do it? I said, well, we set up fall restraint, and we go out through the hatch and we walk the I-beam. And they're like, okay. And so she says, well, where's the fall restraint? I said, well, we took it with us. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean you took it with us? Well, it belonged to me. Yeah. I took it when we walked away from the contract. I said, but I'll just tell you have a choice, either set up fall restraint, or the better option is going to be, but it's going to cost you, get an atrium lift in there that'll reach 75 feet. Mm-hmm. Then they call me back and they're like, it's like $15,000 for the weekend. I go, what do you want to tell me?
They're expensive toys.
Oh yeah. So then they're like, well, you changed all these lights for the previous owners and management. You're not an electrician. I go, I never said I was. They asked me if I could do it. I gave them a price and I did it. Mm-hmm. Is there an issue there? Yeah, there kind of is, but they agreed to the price.
Right.
They didn't want to spend $15,000.
I do some shit occasionally that I'm not hired to do. Hey, can you do this? Younger. Sure, I can do that for you. You know what I mean? Especially
I train a lot of other industries now, like steel workers, electricians, engineers, and stuff. And I had this gig up. If you guys go into my Facebook and dig back like into last spring, you'll see these pictures in Minneapolis where I had trained in an electrical company to do RDS work. And then what they had to do is take all the LED, like fancy artistic light fixtures off the sides of these towers and change them to or incandescents and change them to LEDs, right?
Yeah.
So they blueprinted the whole job, I helped them do some of that, but then they got out there to do it and they were petrified.
Yeah.
So I get a phone call, hey, can you come out and just do some rigging consulting and rescue standby? So I went out and in these Sparkies, we're doing just what you're talking about, getting on rope, going over the sides and doing that stuff. Who else is going to do that?
Right. Right.
And now that's what they do. They've got a market where they're just going around buildings and doing that.
Yeah.
There's some I got called to do a job. I don't remember where it was. Was it New Jersey or Pittsburgh? I can't remember. They wanted to change the aviation lights out on the top of a tower. So and there was an engineering company that I had trained out there, and there's no electricians in the area that could do it. So the engineers went out and did it just with RDS work.
Right.
Fucking A.
Right.
And when you're doing stuff like that, you're not bidding against maintenance work. It's one and done, right?
Right.
So like even when we're doing we're bidding window cleaning, it's extremely competitive. It can come down to a few dollars without a relationship.
Right.
And so you have to bid it real tight. But then all the accessory work, we're going to go change out these signs. We're going to go do some caulking or glazing for you. We're going to do a little tuck pointing. We're going to do a leak down test for you. Now we're bidding against bringing in a crane. Right. So we can charge like 10 times our mandate rate.
Right. Because
and it's win for us. It's a windfall. It's a win for them because they're saving tens of thousands of dollars. Right. And so window cleaning is our foot in the door, but there's so much other stuff you can get once your foot's there.
Right. Once you have the qualifications. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, that's the path for anything. Education will always win in any industry that you're in. Yeah. And so, I promote people, the future is not in RDS. The future is in industrial rope access.
Yeah.
Because you can do so much more. It's raising the bar. Employers don't want to hear that because they have to pay our IRA tax a whole lot more, but we can do a whole lot more, and we're bidding against bigger, badder things.
Right.
You know, in IRA, you can take it all the way to the ground. It's not like you can't do IRA under 300 feet.
Right.
And so it's a huge competitive advantage. And once people start understanding that, RDS is kind of just, you know, it's the foot in the door. But once you've got a complete IRA team, then you can really go do what you want.
Right. I'm just gonna say, yeah.
Are we out of time already?
Yeah, it's already 10 o'clock, man.
Yeah, well, it seems like we just sat down. You guys are so pretty to look at.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb right here, Jeffrey, because in March we do the high rise, and we'd really love to get you back.
Yeah,
on
if we could get you back for the high rise month in March, if you could pull that off, you know, once we get a little closer, we'll reach out to you and see if you have any time. Because
give me some more time, we'll talk.
It's March Madness is what it is.
Right.
So we dedicate the whole a month of March to high rise, guys. You know what I mean? So it'd be awesome to have you back. You are awesome to talk to. I got to tell you, I know I'm busting your balls about being old.
I just sit back and
listen. I mean,
it's just education.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you get me on and we're talking high rise, but you know, we can talk about anything. You know, it doesn't always just have to be high rise stuff.
Well, it's kind
my background is in everything you guys do as well.
Yeah, but I feel like when we have someone like you on, it's gonna, first of all, people are gonna see your name and they're gonna want to come and hear you talk, and they're, of course, like I said, there was questions. You know, people have questions, so it's only right to talk about this because there's not very many candid moments, I don't think, where guys talk high rise that have the experience that you have. So it's good that we talk about it. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's a blessing. It's an honor. I hope your audience enjoys it. Hopefully, I didn't piss too many people off.
No, not at all.
You're fine.
I won't get too much hate mail and bomb threats.
No,
but
you're good,
you know, I really just want to promote the industry, and you know, if we can all raise the professionalism, it's going to be better for everybody.
I completely agree. Completely agree. Thanks for coming on, man. We will see you guys next week, or one more, and then the week of Thanksgiving we're not doing.
Who's on next week?
I'm not. I don't think anyone's on. I might.
Actually, Seth's wife's going to give birth live on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Jesus, I doubt that highly. But yeah, dude, I really appreciate you coming on, Jeffrey.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't even ask him. I was just like, hey, does anybody want to come on? And he sent me a private message. So like, that's fucking
When
dope.
I saw that, I go,
that's
this
awesome.
is going to be awesome.
Mark, as soon as Mark's seen that, he's like, I'm going to get on the show.
But we're in such a big growth spurt that, you know, I'll probably be here till like mid-December.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I'll reach out to you a couple months early before March, and hopefully you'll be able to come visit with us again.
We understand.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And even if that doesn't work, Jeff, from all three of us, I can tell you have an open door anytime you want to come out.
That was great, dude.
Whenever.
Well, you know, if you're in a pinch and you need people, reach out to me. I'll make it work whenever I can.
Awesome,
absolutely.
Brother.
We appreciate you.
All right, man. See you later, everybody.
Thanks. Peace.
Again, I really appreciate you coming on, Jeff. Seriously.
Thanks. Are we off now?
No, not yet. We're close. No, we're not off yet.
So I can't say real stuff?
No, you can't say anything bad, right?